Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
And today we are talking Black Widow. Yes, the newest entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It, of course, is the first feature film in Phase 4. We've had a few TV shows now in Phase 4 that were supposed to come out post Black Widow, but because of the pandemic, of course, that you already know, we are just now getting to it. And me and Daniel have all the thoughts on the things. Yeah,
no, it's weird. I mean, it's the first time I've been back in the theater since I almost called it Inception, and then I almost called it Dunkirk. But you know what I'm talking about.
Tenet.
Yeah, Tenet.
Yeah.
The forgettable Nolan movie. Yeah, so for one, it was just nice to be back in the theater. I will say this doesn't necessarily feel like a Phase 4 movie to me. And then we can get into some more of that in a later in a later time. But I think overall, it was nice to be back in the theater. It was nice to be back in the theater with good friends. I ate way too much pasta beforehand, just a disclosure, and I got very sleepy, very sleepy a couple of times. But I was able to follow it, most of it, and this will work into some of my critique. But yeah, it was a good time.
No, it was. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, that notification bell. That way you're up to date on all future episodes of Podcast 2 for 1, as well as the cool content we have at 2 for 1 Studios. If you want to go to the YouTube channel, which is the place where we recommend you consume the content, it's youtube.com/2for1 Studios. And then for all your central 2 for 1 things, it's 2for1studios.com. So we have a lot of different things. And of course, we are brought to you by Kapow Comics, located in 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. They have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and special guest appearances throughout the year.
It's like literally a mile-ish from where I'm sitting right now.
Very close, it's not very far, yeah. And it's a cool place to hang out. And if you like the things we talk about, then you'll like the things that are in there that you can buy and spend your money at. Capitalism at its finest.
Yeah, maybe do some research on Kang.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. That's the tease for next week's episode, or next episode, not next week's
episode. Whenever that comes. Yeah.
Whatever. Who knows? But I will say this. That's one thing real quick. It's a little criticism on us is that I think you and me both feel like we have to get the podcast out as soon as possible after something is coming out like Black Widow. And there is, yes, that is important. But like, there's a lot of podcasts that I follow that they take, they had the same Saturday every week, whatever, and it's normally a week after something releases.
Sure.
I care about their opinion, so I'm okay to wait. It don't matter if it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. Like, I want to listen to what they have to say about it. So I think we are honestly too. Sometimes
I think honestly, I agree with you, and I think honestly too, you need. I personally need some time to just think about what happened, or even rewatch. Maybe in the case of Loki. For the next episode, because I think sometimes there's just so much that goes on and so many like ripple effect implications. You just need time to kind of process what happened and how you feel about it. So no, I think we're doing a great job.
I think we're doing fine, and it's funny because I think we both really just want to talk about Loki right now,
which may be a criticism of the movie wrapped within that. You know what I'm saying?
There is. There's a good point there.
Yeah.
I will say that I haven't talked to anyone about this movie until last night, where I was invited to Andrew Sweatman's podcast, Art House Garage, and
go check that out. It's a great local podcast.
It's really cool.
It does a lot of like classic movie, Criterion movies. Oscar,
he told me last night he's fixing to start kind of mixing in some of this newer stuff too to kind of balance the scale, so to speak. So. Anyway, we had a good conversation on that, and but other than that, I still haven't talked to anyone about it, and me and him didn't really go deep like you and I do. We didn't really talk about film structure and that kind of stuff. So I'm very much looking for, and honestly, what's funny about that, the episode was more about probably Loki and its implications and the wider MCU than even we were supposed to.
Well, I think we can go ahead and address that, because I feel like this keeps coming up. Like, there is this weird disconnect for me with the Black Widow film, and I think I remember leaning over maybe to you or I can't remember, but asking you like, I was like, when exactly is this film taking place? Because it's a little vague. And
A
I am
little
like,
bit,
you
yeah.
know, I'm an MCU, like I would consider myself a big MCU fan. And I feel like I have a very clear idea of the timeline and I've watched all these movies so many times. And it's weird for me to not really it felt weird that I didn't know exactly when this was taking place. And I think that kind of built into this for me feeling that the stakes of this movie were not very high. I think because we know this takes place before Thanos, when you know nothing matters as much when you compare it to Thanos for sure. But like, I don't know. I think it's because also we've already seen Black Widow's full arc at the end of Endgame, and even in Infinity War and Endgame, her whole kind of trajectory is that like she's like, but this is I've never had a family, and I found it in the Avengers, and I'm willing to die for them. Right? That's kind of like her whole thing.
Right.
At least in my opinion. And so I don't know. There's just this weird thing of like this movie takes place before all that, kind of amidst conflicts that have already been resolved in the wider MCU world. So there's no mystery, there's no wonder of how will this happen, how will this take place, and there's even this idea that like, well, nothing can happen in this movie that is that big a deal because it would have had effects on the future films, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? And and so to me, I think this movie just feels a bit, and I think it's probably a victim of the fact that it's been delayed over a year as well, and that this would have come out before all these other MCU Phase 4 movies, TV shows. And so I think there's part of it that just is like, oh, this feels late and weirdly insignificant within, like, especially when we're watching Loki, and you know, not getting into the finale too much, but the wide ripple effects that the finale and really the season 1 of Loki has just feels like we're going to be talking about that for the next 10 years. And compared to the movie where it's like, I don't know the next time I'll really think about this movie outside of talking about it with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are all valid criticisms. And I think to your point, a big part of it is, yes, this movie was supposed to come out before even WandaVision, and more importantly, before Falcon Winter Soldier.
Yes.
And especially with things going on with WandaVision, and more importantly with Loki, with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and all these other things on the horizon, it does feel, obviously the stakes are just so minimal what's actually happening in the wider universe. But this movie ultimately to me it's a backdoor pilot to other characters that will appear very soon or have already appeared in other ways.
You're right.
And
I would say that's probably the strength of the movie too, is the other characters. Yeah. I would think and it's sad because it's her swan song, but to me, Black Widow's the least interesting character in the movie. Other than the villain,
so.
Other than the villain, I'll get to him because he was not in. I just found him to be very flat. But
yeah, there were some issues with him for sure.
I think to me it's like why can't I think of her first name? But Pugh, her little sister,
Florence,
yes. Her chemistry was really good. Like, and I would say the chemistry between her and Black Widow is good. But it's mostly good because of Florence more than it is good because of Scarlet. For me, Scarlet Johansson. That's what I'm doing. Scarlett Johansson and Scarlet Witch. That's difficult.
That's what's happening here.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think ScarJo is just so charming in general, and that's come with all the baggage of her other movies like Lost in Translation and all these other things that I just always have enjoyed her on screen. And I do want to talk about Florence Pugh and stuff, but I kind of want to go back just a second here and talk about its place in the MCU. It is obviously we have Endgame, and then we have No Way Home, or not No Way Home. We have Far From Home, which is like basically the epilogue to the Infinity Saga. It is weird having Black Widow afterwards, and you could just
Yes.
you could just see the meetings. You can see the studio at work saying Scarlet Johansson's probably like, hey, I'd like a solo movie, and they're probably like, yeah, we'd like to make one, but they just weren't. They were too afraid, beforehand, before Civil War and all these other things, before the motions were in place to end the saga. And it just kind of happened where it rolled out to this, and it is kind of weird. I mean, this movie obviously should have happened right after Civil War.
If you're doing an MCU watch, other than the end credit scene, there's literally no reason not to watch this right after Civil War. If I'm doing that's when in fact, the movie probably feels a lot better coming right after that, just even thematically and stakes
that's what I'm
wise.
saying.
You know what I mean? You should
definitely.
just pretend it didn't come out now and do a rewatch and pretend it came out, in chronological order.
One thing I really did was I went and I have a Letterboxd account, and I will put this link in the description below of the episode. But I went through and I started really breaking down the narrative structure of the MCU as we've seen it so far, including the Marvel one-shots, including after credit scenes and everything, and really putting show notes in there of saying, hey, this part of the movie takes place before this movie and X, Y, and Z. I think it's pretty comprehensive. And it obviously it plugs Black Widow right in between Civil War and Homecoming. Homecoming takes place 6 months after Civil War, and this movie roughly takes place a couple weeks after Civil War. And I will put that in the description below, and it's a pretty cool little thing if you're interested in the MCU and how you should watch it narratively, and when you should pause it and come back and watch the after credit scene in what order. But
I'm not sure the after credit scene is that
it's not
necessary.
It's really not, because everything that we're going to, it was just a tease for Hawkeye. It's all it was. And also, and at the time it would have been a cool, which I called it last week in the podcast. You did. At the time, it would have been a cool little thing. Like, oh, she was in, we're talking about Julia Dreyfus' character, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And, it would have been cool to be like, oh, snap, she's in Black Widow, and obviously she's recruiting U.S. agent now, and she's putting together a Dark Avengers for something. I think the more interesting thing is, which we can get to here in a little bit, is how did she know that Black Widow sacrificed herself for the Soul Stone? That to me is a more interesting question than even her putting a team together.
I assume they just told everyone when they got back. I don't know. Had an Avengers newsletter.
But that seems not.
It just seems like those kinds of things become common knowledge within the universe.
I guess,
and they just kind of assume that you're like, oh well, it gets around.
So you're saying that everyone just knows that everyone time traveled and did all these other crazy things? I don't think so.
I don't know about the time travel. Well, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think so. So either it's just a MCU blip, which I don't think it is,
or she's a part of she's obviously a part of some sort of intelligence network that has more information than the common person. So
yeah, and the only people that could leak this information would be the Avengers, or Hawkeye. Someone that was literally there in the moment would be able to leak this. So it is curious to see where it's going.
I could see Scott Lang accidentally saying too much at a coffee shop or something. You know what I mean?
Everybody gives him too much shit, but yeah, you're right.
I love him. I think he's great.
I do too. No, I think he's great. No, let's get back to the movie. So I will say this. We've talked a lot about its place in the MCU. We haven't really talked about whether it's good or not. And I think it's actually I think it's a really good movie. I've got issues with it, of course, but and maybe that's just being in the environment in the theater. But I think overall it's pretty solid. The performances are overall great. The action is really good. And I think that I personally like the stakes of the movie. And I like some of the things it does for past mentions. I think that this movie it paints things in an interesting way, and typically with Budapest, I guess it's pronounced, and it kind of fills in some blanks there that I do think if you do watch this in the narrative order, it totally justifies its existence, especially with some of its stylistic approaches.
Yeah, I think to me this movie to me, there's this general feeling of an afterthought that this movie feels to me. And I think that kind of feels perpetuated throughout a lot of it for me. the narrative pacing of it, just I don't feel like I could ever get into the rhythm of what the movie was trying to do. And I felt like I didn't love the handheld cinematography style that was pretty prevalent. I thought even like, especially in the beginning of the film when they were kind of they were like the fake American family. I don't know. There was just a lot that just felt like oh, this is a cool idea, but I don't feel like we're going all the way enough with it
100.
to make it what it needs to be. And I
100%.
even like okay, they're this American family. I mean, why can't we stay there a bit longer and make that a bigger twist? Because it felt like that twist just never really came about in a way that felt meaningful. And even her, like when young Black Widow, young ScarJo, when she, they're like, she grabs the gun, she's like, I'll kill you all, like with the soldiers that are all around. I don't know, that just felt very believable to me. And I just kind of kept feeling like, I don't know, there's just something that doesn't, there's something interrupting my cognitive dissonance with believing in this world and believing this is, suspending my disbelief. And I just felt like that kind of continued through the film, where the pacing of it again just felt kind of strange to me. It felt like we were just dealing with a bunch of sequences more than acts. I didn't believe some of the character motivations. They just kind of felt a little bit quick and sloppy to me, especially with the lady that plays the mom, or the mom type character. I just felt like we went from, oh, here she is, we're a family again, to, oh yeah, she's the one that's actually been like a part of these bad experiments on people, to this weird Ocean style, oh, well, she's on our team, but she's not, but she is, kind of back and forth. That just constantly kind of made me just feel like, I don't know, this feeling of like we're just riding this out of our ass a little bit, or just like it just doesn't feel like, I don't know, it just felt a little bit sloppy to me. And I think part of that too was I thought the villain was just as generic a villain as we've maybe had in the MCU. He's just this big Russian mobster type. That like KGB type dude that, and then his whole like thesis of like, I'm going to take over the world with the world's only resource that it doesn't know what to do with, girls. And I just remember like,
little
what
girls.
does that mean? Like, what? Like, that's the one resource the world doesn't know what, like, it has too much of. And I was like, I'm not really following your logic here, man. Like, I don't know. Like, I guess I felt like the movie was trying to go for some like real pertinent themes of like abuse, or maybe like exploitation of women. And I think that's a cool direction to go with, but it feels like that, like their ultimate reveal was like, well, it's just this big bad guy that wants to collect girls and turn them into assassins. And this is like the ultimate version of, female exploitation. I don't know, just none of it felt real to me. All of it just felt a little bit too cartoony and a little bit just like, okay, I guess there's this just evil Russian dude that does that. And I don't know. I was not very taken with all of that. The best part of the movie for me was the dynamic between, the family, the four members of the family. I liked when they fought together. I like their moments when they're like all sitting at a table together and talking about things. I thought that was, pretty good. I never like when at the end, again, it's part of the problem is this movie being made after all these other movies is like, Natasha's like, well, I've found this family, but I've got another family I need to go take care of now. Like, talking about the Avengers, whatever. I don't know. Just none of that felt real. And I think part of it is that we never ever heard about this other family, any of the other films. And it felt like Infinity War Endgame was the whole idea of her being like, I have no family but the Avengers, so I'll sacrifice myself for them. Let's not bring up my other Russian family that I just had a, adventure escapade with that I feel close with now too. I don't know. It just felt like this movie felt forced. It did not feel like someone said, you know what? I've got this amazing idea for a Black Widow movie and we've got to do it because it's so good that it just deserves to be told, right? It felt like someone said, well, she's got to have her solo movie. I don't care that she's dead or all these other things happen. It's still got to happen. Write something. And this is what we got.
There's a lot to unpack there, Daniel.
Yeah, I know. I kind of fire hydrant.
You went through every point of the movie.
I'm sorry. I got it, and it went on a roll.
It's okay because I haven't.
And
it's
we got
okay
this mess
because I have an answer for everything you said.
Okay, great.
So I've been thinking about all these things. But before I give you my answer, I do want to give a shout out to another podcast. Our friends Mike and Ed. They do a podcast called Super Serious 616. You can find them on any podcast service, and of course superserious616.com if you want to check them out. They are radio commentators in 1961 discussing the ramifications of superheroes, monsters, and aliens. So what that means is they are taking basically an Orson Welles War of the Worlds kind of approach. But what if these comics are actually happening, and we're going to react and act like they are happening and give our thoughts on those things. So Spider-Man.
So it's almost like a little bit of a play, or like a
100%.
It's like a performance. It's like a little.
It is a performance. Really cool. So Spider-Man, he comes out, and he's a vigilante, and he meets the Fantastic Four in his first appearance, or not first appearance, but his first issue. So what does that mean as someone who's watching from the eye? So here's a quick trailer of Super Serious 616.
In 1961, the Fantastic Four returned from space and the world changed forever.
Over the next year, the Earth experienced 3 alien attacks, the destruction of Lower Manhattan, and the re-emergence of ancient gods.
Super Serious 616 is the podcast that covers it all from the inside.
What would it be like to live in that world?
Join Ed and Mike as they ask questions no one else is asking.
Is Iron Man a good use of shareholder capital?
Subscribe at Super Serious 616 or wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back again. Check out Mike and Ed's podcast, Super Serious 616. Subscribe to them. Give them a read, and they got some cool stuff around the corner, and they're making a lot of content pretty regularly.
I just want to say that was a great job, Donovan, of like the little suspending the answer and putting the ad roll there, making the audience kind of salivate for what you're going to say. That was
other
nice.
guys.
That was a little tease. Just tease.
A little tease. Thank you. It's I'm trying to segue in a profound and dramatic way. Okay, here we go. You ready for this?
I'm ready. Hit me.
I'm going to answer everything, and of course you can jump in and kind of derail me if you want, but I have an answer for everything. First off, I think your problems about it being stylistically not honed in are absolutely true, because it does feel like, of course, the comparisons we all been hearing are James Bond, Jason Bourne, and yes, there is some Oceans / Mission Impossible there. And really only two scenes in the final act, which actually I did not like, which I'll get into in a second. And there's another one that people aren't really talking about a whole lot, which is a Terminator thriller, because Taskmaster 100% is the Terminator.
Yes,
it's someone chasing.
That just brought up another problem with me. And I want to suspend this, but the fact that I just now remembered that Taskmaster was in this movie is a huge issue.
Right,
because that is how forgettable that character was. Move on.
And it's very much and you're right. There's not really so easy maybe act breaks. It's all about sequences. It's about getting to the next section. And to me, the movie went by pretty quickly. There's a lot of action in it, and I thought the conversations were fun, and at least they were charming enough that it bridged all these action sequences, which are pretty nice. But no, I think there is a problem there, is that they wanted to pay a homage to a lot of different genres, or not even genres per se, but franchises. And they didn't really dived in super hard on one of them. And I think that it's a fault and a little fault, but I think that, it's still entertaining and still serves its purpose. The opening scene, which takes place in the 80s, my first immediate thought was, holy crap, they're doing The Americans, which is an amazing show.
Yes. But they did The Americans, but not interesting.
But not interesting. It's not as interesting. I still love and to me, it felt like a direct call to, even though it's a thing that's, I don't know. It felt like someone watched The Americans and it was like, hey, we should do this. And it makes total sense as to that. And what's interesting though, is that it makes her almost automatically, because there's always been this issue, not American, but issue of U.S. spy or a British spy. And it automatically starts kind of painting her. Not British, a Russian spy. So it automatically makes her or Soviet spy, whatever. It automatically makes her like have her toes in both worlds even more than what we thought. And to me, that's kind of because it's like this anti-Russian, anti-communist thing that they're obviously trying to alleviate through her throughout the first couple movies she has. And it feels like a very pro-American kind of thing where they're taking away accents. They're even making Scarlet Witch's accent disappear. She becomes more Americanized. All these other kind of things. And so it kind of paints a little bit more of her toes.
To be fair, they did address that in which I appreciated.
They did, but the point still stands that it was.
It does. No, I completely agree with you. I think it was also really confusing because we've had in what was the movie? It was Age of Ultron, when they all get like mind fucked by Scarlet Witch, and she goes back in time and like is seeing herself as a kid. And so I think when I was watching this, I was like, wait, she's supposed to be like being trained right now. She's like what, 12 or something? She's not old in that early 80s scene. And so I'm like, wouldn't she still be like being turned into an assassin? Or like we're supposed to assume she's already had all of that training and been turned into an assassin by this age, which feels strange.
No, I mean it's clearly stated that whenever she pulls the gun at the airport that, oh, you're going to be a great assassin and we're now fixing to put you into the red room.
See, but I thought that was the whole idea that like she was already aware that they were like that wasn't real. Like the little Florence was the only one that thought that was a real family, which doesn't make sense either. I'll say that. But like, I guess to me, it just felt confusing as a way to start the movie, because I feel like it just felt incongruent with the other things we've known about her past or what's been going on. I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, timeline wise, it does work out. I mean, it shows that.
But how did she get there?
She was
like, where was she?
She was born in Russia. She probably had some type of intelligence training, and those are not her actual parents. But somehow she got into this program. Let's say into this espionage program. She went with the Red Guardian / Rachel Weisz's character, who's the mom that you mentioned earlier. They go there. She obviously gets a taste of American life. And she obviously likes it for obvious reasons compared to Russia in the 80s. And then after she gets out, then she becomes part of the Red Room through this guy's machinations.
Yeah, but I guess I just thought we would have found out who her real parents were or how she even got involved in this world. It's just like we already get into the world and she's already a part of it.
Well, I have an answer for that.
Okay.
Which I'll get to in a little bit.
Keep going.
But I will say that the structure of the movie didn't really bother me. It's definitely sequence based, and I enjoyed most of it all throughout. I think one of the cool things about this movie again is the backdoor pilot for Florence Pugh's character passing the torch to Black Widow, and also
Red Guardian, right? I mean, like
definitely, but it is interesting because Red Guardian. I'm an American, right? And I am pro-American values for the most part. Sure. Like, there's a lot of things I really enjoy about being an American. And I think it's, obviously patriotism and that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of things that Red Guardian, he stands for, or at least that communism, that I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird that we're pushing him and that we're going to bring him in. And it's weird.
I don't assume he's going to be like actually like pushing communism as a concept.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But it definitely doesn't. But he never apologizes for his role in the politics. He apologizes for his role with the family, and it definitely seems like obviously he's wrapped up in some pseudo history he made up in himself that he's fighting Captain America and all these other things. Right. When timeline wise, he never did because Captain
America was still in the ice, right?
Yeah, exactly. Unless he was fighting, which would be cool. Yeah,
if he was fighting Samuel, or what's his name?
Yeah, I can't think of his name, but Black Captain
America. Yeah,
in the 50s
Samuel?
or 60s.
I don't know.
No, Sam Wilson, so I don't think it's
Samuel. Oh, yeah.
But if that was happening, but I just don't think I'm not sure the time works out there.
That was the Nazis. I thought that was the 40s when they did that. Or the 50s.
It'd be like the 40s, 50s that he's doing it, maybe 60s. Yeah. That gets locked up. I can't remember. But then we also have Winter Soldier operating too as its own pseudo spy Captain America, which is also Russian.
And Hydra I mean, I guess Hydra isn't Russian; they're German.
Yeah.
Because they were like
I mean,
like
he's
a
the
like a
Winter
sect
Soldier.
within the Nazis.
Yeah,
Like,
but the
is the whole
Winter Soldier
idea.
is Russian. Like he's a Russian Soviet spy because it's all about the Soviet winters. That's all it's
Right,
about.
but so that's confusing.
But keep in mind that the Hydra is within all sectors of government, so it's not really
Right, but they
pinpointed to-
started in Nazi Germany, right? Like that's
Yes, they
at least.
did.
Yeah. Okay.
They did, yes. So it does get kind of wishy-washy and a little.
Because why wouldn't they know about each other? They'd be like, "Oh yeah,
And-
Winter
and
Soldier
the-
did. We ran some missions, or
And the big thing is they maybe did. We just haven't seen that yet.
yeah."
And
maybe we'll get that eventually.
Yeah,
Some
and it's
moment, yeah.
possible. But I will say that let's talk about Taskmaster for a second.
Okay.
Which
You
as
want
soon
to.
as, and we're getting, obviously we've been spoiling stuff already, but as soon as we saw the little girl and we saw the end of the Budapest mission, which is taking out this guy who runs the Red Room, who's our antagonist
Yeah.
ultimately. As soon as we saw that little girl, I immediately thought, okay, that little girl is Taskmaster because
Oh, really?
yeah, I leaned over to Matt and I said that girl's Taskmaster, and he was like, oh, you're right, and of course it was. Just because you're fighting a villain that you created physically, and if you're trying to stop a program that creates super soldier girls, then obviously there's a mirror there that you accidentally created the best super soldier girl, and now it's your fault because of that,
Yes.
and you're taking away her
Yes.
agency, which is something that Scarlet, or something I'm doing it too now, something that Black Widow didn't have in a lot of ways, because there is some
Right.
pushback here with Age of Ultron. Everyone really dogged Joss Whedon for taking away her ability to have children, and not even that so much, but more of I guess the verbiage that was used of her saying I'm a monster, and almost like I'm a monster if I can't have kids, that kind of thing. And
I never
it
got
gets-
that
it gets-
impression, but
I didn't either, but it gets complicated and people's hate with it. And it seems like they were also trying to rectify some of that too, is saying, no, it's not my fault that I can't have kids because I'm a killer. It's this other guy's fault that took away our agency, basically.
well, I assumed
But-
that was what the whole thing was anyway.
Hey, I did too. But it definitely,
I mean, it didn't. I didn't assume she did it to herself.
I think a lot of us thought that, but I think there's a lot of people who are very vocal who really dogged Age of Ultron because, of
Yeah.
course, her big thing in the movie is that she has a romantic relationship with Bruce Banner, and of
Sure.
course, her only things, either she's fighting off Tony and Iron Man 2, and Avengers, she has a romantic relationship with Avengers 2 with Bruce, and so all her things are always
And
tied
then-
with men.
And then she makes out with Cap and Winter Soldier.
She does.
There's
and
a
then
whole there's a whole romantic vibe in that between them.
there is something between them a little bit, but
But then he
in a
makes
way-
out with Peggy's granddaughter in the next movie in Civil War. Cap
Yeah, I
was
mean, there's-
kind of a whore. Let's be
there's-
real. Like, little bit horny.
Frozen and Ice, he gets a little bit of pass,
I
but
guess
but then in
so.
Infinity War, it's really, I mean, she doesn't have a whole lot to do other than fight. I can't think of her name as Proxima or whatever her name was, the alien chick. And then in Endgame, it's definitely I'm going to sacrifice myself for all the boys, and then
For
I
my
don't
family.
get I don't get a funeral, but which everyone took problems with, which I also didn't bother me for
But they
reasons we'll get into in a second.
Listen, they all looked sad on the dock. That was her
Yeah,
funeral.
it took a second. They did,
No, you're right.
and
And
to the
Hulk threw a
filmmakers and-
bench into the lake. I don't know what you
Yeah, he did.
want.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, big thing is too is that the filmmakers have said this could be them trying to retroactively fix it or just whatever. But they says Black Widow wouldn't want to have a funeral because it's not her style, which I'm like, I agree with. It doesn't seem like she
Sure.
would want people moping around her.
I guess
makes
I'm
total
just
sense to
these
me.
are like criticisms. Like who's bothered by this? I don't.
Hey, a lot.
I don't
I mean, I'm
talk
on
to
the
these
threads
people.
all-
I guess.
all day, every day for years now. This has been a constant conversation. But I will say, let's go back to Taskmaster. Here's a
if we
problem
must.
with me is that to me, and Matt brought this up, and he's right, is that Taskmaster has always been associated with it as a Deadpool villain. He's someone, and he's more of a skull face. He's someone who actually mimics other, heroes, and he's a mercenary. So it always kind of had that dual thing with Deadpool there, two mercenaries fighting each other.
Sure.
And they definitely took a lot of liberties with Taskmaster. They created a new character.
Well, it's just
and-
completely different. The only thing different. I mean, The
only thing his name
are similar.
is the looks are similar, and then also the
The
name
name.
is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people were really getting upset about this. I wasn't honestly just super upset about it. I wasn't thrilled by the decisions, but also I was kind of like, I don't have a huge want or tie to Taskmaster. I'm not just dying every day. Like, give me Taskmaster.
Exactly. I think if this was Venom, we might be upset.
If it was Venom,
if someone had made a Venom movie that was bad or just not true to the character, I think I can just imagine the feelings that I would feel about that and about the wasted potential.
I can almost imagine that if that scenario did happen, that some studio executive somewhere would name a sequel "Let There Be Carnage." I have a feeling that if that happened, that's the boat we would be in.
Oh my God! Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare escape. Nightmare reality. It's the real Zack Snyder's nightmare world.
Yeah, and this will tie into Taskmaster and the antagonist and everything. Last night, Andrew asked me. He said that, hey, I remember hearing that you don't like Captain Marvel, and I was wondering that since this is another female-centric solo movie, what are your thoughts now? And I had to tell him, look, I enjoy the movie Captain Marvel. I just don't like. I like everything about that movie except Brie Larson in the role of Captain Marvel.
Sure.
It has nothing to do with it's being a solo female lead or anything like that. I just didn't think Brie Larson had charisma or she was very likable in the role. And there's plot justification for that, her being like a reborn Kree and all these other things. But overall, I just wasn't a fan of the character. And I think Marvel knows that. I think people had that problem. But I love Scarlett Johansson in this movie. And another thing that definitely Captain Marvel did, which I didn't have a huge problem with, is pushing a feminine, I don't say agenda, but definitely pro-feminine values, right? Sure. Girls can stand up. They have power. They have agency. They have all these other things, the same things that men do in whatever. And it does kind of feel a little preachy sometimes in Captain Marvel, even though it didn't really bother me. I could just kind of see the meetings happening where they're talking about this stuff as the writing's happening in Captain Marvel. And I think Black Widow didn't have that for the most part, except for this line that you mentioned earlier of the most valuable resource in the world that no one uses is little girls. No one
cares about. Yeah, it's like disposable.
Yeah. And it's just, and the pheromone thing, which is used as a way to, obviously, a male getting the power to control other people, specifically women, with a pheromone. It feels very. It feels
sexploitive. I mean, it feels like and I get. I think that's my issue with it, is that I think it's a good idea. I think it is a smart way to deal with stakes that could be in this movie that don't have to be the world's ending. But I think the execution is just sloppy. I think it's just generic as fuck. Like, it's just like he's saying, like, again, he says that line like, oh, the expendable resource in the world is girls. What does that mean? Like literally, what does that mean? Because I don't know what you mean by that, because I guess I'm just like, I mean, we're talking about human trafficking, but that doesn't really make sense with that idea either. Like, I guess I'm just like, I get that, like, the villain of this movie is exploitation in a concept, and this idea that, like, this is like the most extreme version of exploitation that you can get, right? Like, you're literally like taking someone's identity away and making them an assassin, forcing them to kill people, whatever. Like, and I'm sure sex is involved in that all the time. I guess it's just like, it's like they had a cool idea, but they didn't flesh it out enough. They didn't go deep enough to actually say something interesting about any of this. It ends up just being like, well, here's this evil Russian oligarch type character who wants to enslave all the girls, just all the girls in the whole world, I guess. And we'll stop him. You know what I mean? Like, no,
weird.
And it just falls flat in execution to me. Yeah. And it's like, if you want to take a comic book movie and do it about something real, like exploitation, like human trafficking, whatever you want to do with that, you got to do it right. You can't it just felt phoned in as a theme, as a thematic like idea, as a message of the film. It just felt very phoned in to me.
Let me fix this for you real quick. You ready?
Okay.
I'm not going to say fix it. First of all, I think that if I can totally see a world or a path where I'm in these meetings and I'm thinking, obviously the bad guy has to be this idea that it's just the same process that she went through on repeat, and she has to stop that. And when she stops that, she becomes healed in some way, right? It is the character not atoning, but basically dealing with past trauma and in the same physical trauma that you're dealing with now. One problem with the movie, not saying a problem, but I'm thinking a path that could maybe help it a little bit, was that obviously part of it is her helping her sister, Florence Pugh, which we already get that in the beginning when she becomes, I think, did we ever see her like was she controlled by the drug? I think she was. Isn't that a
Florence?
Sequence where she gets uncontrolled?
Yeah. That's like the first time we see her.
Okay, that's the first.
That's like
one.
the very first thing
perfect,
that happens with her. Which again, like
it
felt like she got introduced really early, and like that. I don't know, like I liked the dynamic between them. Sorry, go ahead. You finish your thought.
No, let me finish this thought real quick. So, I think that part of it is we have all these Black Widows that are in the program, and I think that, and on top of that, you have a Taskmaster who is a person that Scarlet, inherently created. I think that it'd be stronger instead of she's releasing all these people in the world that are under control. If you're going to take the stakes down to a certain level, and that's the hard part, is that they wanted to have a big blockbuster Marvel thing. They could have shaved off $50 million and just had it about her saving one person. And then when you say that one person, which is the Taskmaster thing, but you can really dive into that one person she's saving. Like Taskmaster doesn't seem too much of a complex character.
Yeah. I mean, I think at that point, I could see them being like, oh, but we don't want to get too close to Winter Soldier in concept, because I feel like that's kind of Winter Soldier a bit. The stakes of Winter Soldier, it is Hydra in the world, but really it's Bucky and Steve, right? Like that's the main emotional stakes.
And
of it.
You're right. You're right. They're very similar parallels there with like a mind controlled assassin, 100%. But I'm saying even more of like saving a person or a girl who is like a little girl or something who is not an assassin, someone that hasn't been touched by the devil yet, sort of thing.
Right.
Or all the way,
Yeah.
I think there's a path there that can maybe fix some of the issues you have with it. But again, they're obviously looking at this as like a potential $1 billion movie, and they want, and it's directly referenced, which I really enjoy this scene, which I think is important to note, is that this movie, we do get to see more of Black Widow's personality than we ever have before. And what's really cool about it is the scene where she's watching Moonraker, which is a James Bond movie, and she's eating cereal. And I think it's one of the only scenes in the whole MCU where she's by herself. Has nothing to do with the mission, has nothing to do with anything other than her personal time off and what she's enjoying. And it does, obviously, Moonraker is a reference to what will happen later, which is the big space station in the sky, which is the final act in Moonraker.
And the whole Bond parallels that are just constant.
100%. So obviously it's a little nod there, but like to me, the movie gets validation of existence just for those kind of things, because this is a character we have been with for 10 years. Yeah. And I did enjoy that. And I enjoyed the family dynamics and stuff.
I did too.
I also enjoy how, because they keep talking about Budapest throughout all these movies and how it's just a big deal. And I kept thinking we're going to see it in Hawkeye in this movie. I kept imagining these versions of them. And I kept thinking also, like, there's nothing they're going to do that's going to make me feel like, oh, wow, that was really intense or whatever, because we've seen things so much bigger.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But they did it in a really smart way. They showed you, hey, here's the safe room that we were in afterwards. Here is the hiding spot in the subway that we were in. And you see the markings on the wall. And that's such a good way to still have like this mysticism about what these people went through, but you feel like the aftermath of it. And it makes the events still feel important, at least to these people. And I thought it was super smart.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that was a good way. But I want to go back to something you said a minute ago, because I think you hit the nail on the head of like, Marvel wants this movie to blockbuster like their other blockbusters, but I feel like that the characters they were dealing with and the stories, the best version of a Black Widow movie and story, I don't think is that. I think it is something that's more personal and intimate, and where we're dealing with her.
Or like an Atomic Blonde kind of movie. Like
yes,
Atomic Blonde with Black Widow. That would have been
agree. I agree. And I think, sorry, you brought it up again, but the other character that I was just like, what the fuck is this guy doing in this movie was the whole like safe house dude that like gets her. I was like, this guy is a coffee shop barista and you cannot tell me anything different because this is no way this guy is supposed to be some like super secret, like guy that gets people like, makes people disappear. It's like, no fucking way. This guy is the disposition of a coffee shop barista.
Yeah, 100%. To me, out of everybody, he feels the most out of place, and those scenes feel the most out of place.
And there's like this weird sexual tension that, like, by the end of the movie, they I guess like acknowledge it in a weird way. That's just like, oh yeah, she just flirts with him. That's just their whole thing.
I don't know. It's weird, and obviously it's to bring him back into some capacity, which I don't know what he offers. That
what exactly?
Can't.
I hope they don't.
He will 100%. He will be back at least for
whatever Florence Pugh's in. I guess
we know everybody but Black Widow that's in this movie. It will come back in some form. And I think
Florence Pugh's character's name? I don't even know.
It's Yelena.
Does she have like a moniker? Like Black Widow?
Black Widow. Probably Black Widow, yeah.
It's going to be White Widow.
Or White Widow because of her.
I'll
say this. She is great in it. She to watch.
She's probably the best part.
Her snarkiness and like the gag about superhero landings and like how she like feels gross about it when she gets up. And I mean, all that, she's very endearing and charming, which I think is something that ScarJo did have in moments throughout the MCU. And it kind of fills that gap a little bit.
She's got that very good, like, kind of just, she can come across very natural and normal, like in the conversations, like with those, like, talk, like, why do you always, you kind of flip your hair up like this? Like that all just felt very real and natural in a really, like, fun way.
I mean, I think a big fun thing for me for this is as we're getting farther and farther in the phase 4, and we're introduced to these characters, I keep imagining like, okay, here's the interaction between Yelena and Sam Wilson. And and then we're going to have Hawkeye coming up pretty soon, and we're going to be introduced to Hawkeye's daughter, which is Kate Bishop. Which I do want to get into this. I feel like we talked a lot about the movie itself, but let's get into. Is there anything that you think is leaving on the table? I mean, ultimately, my bottom pitch is I think it's an enjoyable movie. I think Marvel would have even serviced itself better if they had leaned into a specific genre like Atomic Blonde. And kind of maybe just scaled it back a bit. That being said, I enjoyed it, and I'm glad the movie exists, and I'm going to watch it multiple times throughout my life.
Yeah, and I agree. I think my final thought in it is that there's part of this movie that wanted to be like a big dumb action movie with just crazy action and James Bond levels of just kind of intensity and energy. But then there was this other part of the movie that wanted to make some kind of social statement. And I feel like they did not find the balance between those. And I felt like they kind of both suffered, right? I think the action movies part of it didn't fully develop into what it could have been in more of this Atomic Blonde style thing. And at the same time, I don't feel like that the social ideas they were trying to talk about, I don't think they did enough justice to actually have anything interesting to say about them at all.
Yeah. Two things real quick. I mean, can you imagine a John Wick version of Black Widow? Like, that would be incrable. You know what I'm saying? Like
I can. That kind of action. It sounds great. But I again, that feels more like I don't know if Black Widow's the character that does because the one thing with John Wick is that he has like no character depth basically to it.
No, and I'm saying more of like that kind of like somewhere they like action's good in this movie, but it doesn't compete with like even Atomic Blonde or John.
No,
in like
it doesn't
a really
even touch those at all.
It has the blockbuster action easy. But it doesn't have the
choreography.
Even the Jason Bourne. It's like I kept imagining any second that there would be a shot of a guy looking at a computer and it would whip pan to a guy like, where's Black Widow? But it never happened. It felt like we were just like they're dipping their toes in all these genres. And my second point was a thing that really bothered me was that fake out at the end when the face thing. because I had these two flashbacks of her talking to Rachel Weisz's character.
That is the Ocean's level of things where it's just like, well, here's something that the audience could never ever anticipate because it happened off screen.
And I hate that just like, because there's nothing in the movie that sets up these flashbacks in those types of flashbacks. And there's just two of them, and they're out of place. And I was like, "Oh, that's a big stain for me, right there."
And here's what it feels like. It feels like that their finale. They knew that their finale was just flat, so let's throw a twist in there, kind of thing. Of like, well, the finale is just her talking with him and like walking around in circles. That's the big showdown, right?
Yeah,
like,
and there's nothing. Yeah, I mean, and also there's some weird things there too. Is like, I guess this woman. It seemed like Rachel Weisz's character, I can't think of her character name. Yeah. She's like in constant contact with this big bad. And so she just totally flipped the switch.
And it was like this whole thing of like, oh yeah, I'm the mastermind behind this evil thing that's happening that we figure out at the dinner table, but I guess we're just cool with it as long as you help us now. Kind of thing. I don't know. Like it just felt like a very strange turn. And it was like wanting us to just still root for her, but it didn't give us enough reasons to. I don't know, man.
Well, man, it gives her an out to turn good with
it does, but it just feels and just unearned, unnatural, unreal.
I mean, I thought before the movie, like I thought last year, like a year ago, I thought Rachel Weisz was the Taskmaster. When we got our first trailer ever, I thought she was the Taskmaster.
See, I honestly think that would be better. That would have been better.
And I thought that would have been the twist in the movie is that anyway, it wouldn't have worked with what we got.
That would have been better.
But I kept thinking that would anyway. It didn't work.
Because I mean, that's the emotional stake, kind of gut punch you need at the end of this movie was like her having to like fight one of those four that are in that family. Like that 100%. Would have made it so much more like shit.
And the way you do it too is that it's almost like the Winter Soldier, but it's almost where Bucky he goes to sleep and he's put on ice. In this scenario, she's totally of her own agency whenever she's not activated. So she's living out this other life. And so it has this true, I didn't know I'm doing this situation. Mm-hmm. And, or maybe, I don't know, but there's something there.
I think that would have been a much cooler version of this is have her as
I do too.
or have her as the ultimate villain or the ultimate like final battle or something.
I agree. I will say the last thing I want to talk about, and then we can get off here, is the after credit scene and what this means. So it definitely seems like, again, it is weird with the placement of this movie. If you watch the after credit scene and then you go like,
it's like 10 years later or whatever.
You're still 7 movies away from Endgame if you watch it narratively in order. So it's kind of
except for the end credit scene, which is
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you watch the movie in its entirety, there's a weird gap there, and like
you just got to skip the end credit scene if you're watching.
You really do.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. It seems like obviously she knows about Black Widow's sacrifice, or at least she knows something, and she's fixing to pit Yelena against Hawkeye, which is we knew that she was going to be in the show. I had no clue that she was going to be potentially.
I assume that I assume that takes all of one scene to be changed. It's gonna be like, oh, she attacks. Oh no, he gets her in some kind of headlock, and he's like, let's talk now. Stop attacking me, and then they talk, and then they're on the same side. That's
sure.
It sounds like it's simply there to have a character motivation for her to be there.
It makes total and I suspect that's happen. I guess, and I want to talk about that in a second, which I think is a Marvel problem. They're doing this a lot with Spider-Man, where they just like, hey, Spider-Man or Ant-Man knows it makes no difference, and then hey, everybody knows Spider-Man's identity. I have a feeling the next movie they're going to be like, everybody was cool with it.
Or they go like something happens in the whole multiverse thing, or it like reverses. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying, but it feels like Marvel has a bad penchant of like setting up these big things and then like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. Like sometimes and also not sometimes. I don't know, but I do want to talk about what's the motivation here. Is she making a Dark Avengers? She has U.S. Agent. Presumably, she has this new Black Widow under her reign.
Yeah, I don't get the whole what she doesn't like about Cliff Barton thing.
I don't either. It seems like it's other motivations besides Black Widow dying, obviously.
No, I mean, I feel like, who knows? Maybe her whole point is to get them to team up. Maybe she's like just being a manipulative. It's like
the new Nick Fury.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what role she has right now. She's in the after credit scenes. She's just putting the team together. She is the new Nick Fury.
Sorry about that. We had a small interference in the podcast, but now we are back. Yes, we're talking about potentially this new Nick Fury in the form of what's her name? Valentina something crazy something
Dave
name.
Fontaine.
Yeah,
Right?
Dave
Valentina
Fontaine.
Dave
Yeah.
Fontaine or something. I don't
So
know.
I really think that you're right. She's like the new Nick Fury of this universe, and I wonder what her ultimate objection is, because if Nick Fury is not operating in the sense that he is trying to get the next shield for the Earth, then definitely someone else needs to. Or I just feel like it's malicious intent, though.
Oh no, I assume that she will be the antagonist or the what's the word? She will cause the creation of whatever the antagonist group, whatever it is, for the next team up Avengers, like official Avengers titled movie. I could see her being kind of the person that sets into events whatever they're fighting in that film. And I mean, especially with, dipping into a little bit of Loki and these other things going on with the multiverse type level things happening. I mean, we could get really like an Avengers, the Dark Avengers. I mean, that could be the next title, and it is like the Avengers versus the Dark Avengers, basically, in that film. And it's kind of her.
I kind of hope our next Avengers movie is lower scale and it's not the big. I was kind of hoping we had an Avengers movie that just brought the new team together.
Well, that's right. But I think that is what that could be. Is that like the reason that we're kind of reassembling the Avengers is because of this other group that's causing trouble or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean it's very valid. I wonder also if this is all leading to a secret invasion.
Sure. I mean, who knows? Maybe she is a Trill
or a Skrull. A Trill. A Skrull.
Skrull. Sorry, Trill's from Star Trek. Sorry.
I'm really still hoping that Sharon Carter is a Skrull, because she was a abhorrent character in Falcon Winter Soldier, and it only makes sense. It makes me feel better.
God damn it! You just brought that up, and it just remembered how stupid that whole shadow.
It's not.
What was her name?
Stupid. It's the Power Broker.
Broker. I've been playing Mass Effect.
Stupid.
I've been playing Mass Effect, and the Shadow Broker is obviously a big thing in Mass Effect 2. So I'm just getting these things mixed up. But honestly, they're the same character.
They are.
They're the same character. Exactly the same.
Yeah. But I think that, if Sharon Carter is a Skrull, then that will fix some of that stuff. Makes sense why she's acting the way she's acting.
Some of it.
But anyway, I'm curious what happens. Obviously, as of right now, it's tentative that Hawkeye is coming out this fall. They don't have a date for it yet, which I find interesting.
That is odd. Maybe they're still editing.
Potentially, yeah. I know we have What If next.
Or maybe just be we have all these other way cooler shows coming out. Where do we put Hawkeye that it doesn't just get ignored?
Yeah, I mean, again, we have What If next, which we can talk about on our next episode.
When is that?
We have in August, and then we have Miss Marvel, and then we also have Hawkeye this year, and that will be.
I'm really looking forward to television. Miss Marvel.
I'm really indifferent, but I will obviously be there day one. But
I'm hoping. I mean, I like the idea of the character, even just from the little I know from the Marvel Avengers game.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So, I mean, I like it in the fact that I think it's a cool character, and I hope they do it well. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk about Loki, because I think we'll really get into some deep stuff there, and that will be a really fun podcast.
Yeah. It was really surprising in the finale when Loki went back in time and killed Thanos and took over the world. That was really surprising to me. So I can't wait to discuss those ideas.
Well, finally, Daniel, how can our listeners write into us?
You can write into bit.ly/241mail. Let us know what you thought of Black Widow. Are we just totally off the mark here? Because I feel like I came out of that movie being like, I didn't love it. It didn't really just capture my attention. But also the things that I didn't like weren't so bad that it's like a bad movie either. You know what I mean? It was like they're just kind of middling. I would say this movie was a overall positive meh to me. But let us know, bit.ly/241mail. What did you think of Black Widow? What did you think of Florence Pugh's character? What did you think of the big bad Russian guy that literally no one will ever remember what his name is, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Probably
it never
Dreykov
mattered.
or something. Let's look. I said Dreykov as a joke. Let's see what his name is.
Dreykov?
As a joke. Holy shit. No, wait. Her last name is Dreykov. Huh.
Who's this? What?
Taskmaster. So it means her, obviously.
So he has to be, I guess.
It is. Oh, his name's Dreykov. There we go. Ray Winstone is Dreykov.
Dreykov.
Maybe I did know.
What a Russian KGB name that is.
I was guessing, but maybe I wasn't guessing. Maybe my brain did know.
I bet it was subconsciously. It knew.
Maybe, yeah.
All right. So bit.ly/2for1mail. Let us know what you thought and what you're excited about for next in the MCU. Yeah.
And of course, if you can't hit us up at our bit.ly, you can always leave a comment in the comments below on youtube.com/2for1studios. Again, it is the best place to consume the content, and we highly recommend that you subscribe and show your love and support for all the cool things that we have coming out every week on the channel. Daniel, I'm glad we talked about Black Widow, and I'm honestly I'm glad we got this over with so we can talk about Loki next. So
I know, and that just feels like I feel sad for ScarJo because of that, because I just feel like Scarlett Johansson has been so great in the MCU. Like, she's been
I still think she was great in this. I still like the movie.
She is, I just feel like she deserved a better swan song. For as good as she's been, and for the cool of moments as she's had in the past, and just all that, I just think she deserved better.
I still think there's room for a sequel in which there's a gap there where we didn't see where she went. And then my second thing was that she will be back in some form for Secret Wars, which we will talk about on our next episode in Loki.
Can't wait.
Yep. All right. My name is Donovan Thompson.
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
And as always, we have spoken.